What did you think of this storm? The day after the hurricane has turned out into the Pacific Ocean, which we all knew. But you know what? We went through it pretty good. I know that San Diego, which we're not in, had it a little worse as far as rain, and there might have been some flooding. We actually didn't have flooding here. What we did have is when it first came in yesterday afternoon, the gusts were so big that 2 of the gazebos we had took off, and I was hanging on for dear life, screaming and trying to call Gary because he was somewhere on the property and he forgot his cell phone. And there I am hanging on to it, trying to hold it because it wanted to go up, and I'm heavier than that, so it didn't take me. But anyways, we got them all dismantled, and I'll show you the deck. The deck went through okay. It only lasted for about an hour, and it was heavy because what we had were winds coming through with sudden gusts, bursts of gusts, and the palm trees were dropping fronds, and a lot of things were going over. I mean, here you can see we had some chairs and buckets, no big deal. But I will say on the deck, I was surprised that a lot of stuff ended up on the ground. Things were on tables, flew off. I even had here Gary tell me that one of the turmeric plants ended up on the ground. So it was kind of the way the wind came through, but it would come through so hard that I had to close the windows in the house because things inside the house were flying everywhere. But like I said, it didn't last long. This was before the rain. There was no rain at that point. So I guess it was the way it was coming up the canyon, the way the hot air and cold air were hitting, and it was creating a lot of wind. I even called one of my neighbors and told her, get your stuff in that you want in because things are taking off. And she said, yeah, she had an umbrella take off from one part of her yard to the other part of her yard. So they had to get that thing folded and taken down. I know about umbrellas. I had one leave a deck. That's why I don't have any more on the deck. So anyways, all in all, we did perfectly fine. The plants are going to love it. Look at the ground. It's wet. Our ground is all wet. We had under an inch of rain, but you know what? Being dry for all these months, oh my goodness, who knows what this is going to bring? I don't know. I mean, it should bring such a massive amount of growth. Going back to the deck, those containers that I make, that I put the flower pots or the trash cans together on the stands, which I absolutely love, none of those went over. Not the 2 high and not the 3 high. None of them went over. What went over was odd things that you didn't expect. Something stable sitting on, let's say, a small table blew off the table. It was so bizarre. It was on the ground. And a lot of stuff like that was flying. So I grabbed the plants that were on the top of the deck. They weren't actually sitting on the rail, but I got everything on the ground. Figuring if it's on the ground, it's not going to go anywhere. The worst that can happen is it can tip over. But in the yard here, no, as you can see, the large gazebo, I didn't have to do anything with it, but the one in the bird garden, we did have to take the top down and tie it, is what we had to do because it was lifting. Maybe because it's small and lighter, I'm not sure. And maybe the way it was coming up the canyon, it couldn't whip around the house there. So I'm not sure what it was, but we went through fine. I hope everybody else did. And what's beautiful now is the air. Oh, listen. We got a lot of ravens around here. If you can hear that little that's valley quail. You don't see a lot of valley quail. I know we have them. We hear them. We have seen a few, and I never really get a good video of them because they run so quickly. A lot of times they're up here, and they kind of forage through the trees up on the top of the wall, looking for seeds and stuff that are falling off the trees, or grass seeds. When I say that, you know, like weeds and stuff that have gone to seed head, they look for that. But as far as rain, we had light rain all night, which was beautiful. I think the biggest thing that I love is the smell. The smell is sweet and wonderful in the air. Just gorgeous. I could just stand out here all day, though I want to get things done. But it just smells so good. You know how it is after a nice rain? Well, we haven't smelled this in so many months. I can't even remember the last time we smelled anything like this. So I kind of walked around. The front yard looks perfectly fine. Everything looked good in there, and with the ginger and turmeric table, everything was fine there. As you can see, everything is fine back here. Nothing moved. Still have cucumbers growing, and the corn is doing really good. But I think the hardest thing was the deck and anything coming up through the canyon here, because that's what was going on. I think it was just coming up, and it was the direction, because later on, see the canyon? Later on, you could see across the hill, the palm trees were literally leaning, just leaning on their side. Gary pointed it out, but it was missing us. It was going in a different direction. But boy, when it first came in, I think you can see the ground is all wet. Look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? Can you imagine the animals and the plants all being freshly cleaned with rain? Not having that? Now, I water my gardens. A lot of you have asked, how am I keeping my gardens alive? We've had a massive heat wave for 10 days, over 100 degrees, many days of 110. I do believe it's because most of my plants were in totes, and the ones, 99% of my vegetable plants are that way, and they retain water. And as long as they retain, well, here's a good one. Here's an old tote, and we trimmed it down because the top was a little bit. See how the water's in there? See where the holes are? Now this one's a little high. I don't quite go that high, though it's okay. I might add 1 or 2 extra holes when I use this. See how high the holes are? But see the water? So what you don't see when you have a plant in there is there's water retained in there, and you think, oh, it's going to go bad. But how could it go bad if you're not watering? Like a sponge, it wants to go up into the soil that's there. You'll have that thing full of soil and compost, and the compost is drawing off of that. It's drawing up. It can't go out. There's nothing it can do. It can't evaporate. It can only go one way, up. So as long as it's going up, the plants are feeding off of that. And that's why I can still get away at 110 degrees watering once a day. Now this one's got the holes way up high. I've got my polka dot plants in there. See, leaves, collecting leaves. See, and look how beautiful it does here. 110 degrees. Because the water is in there, even if it looks dry, there's water underneath. And these plants just thrive on it. All my plants, look at that. I'll have to clean this all up. Got chairs all over and stuff. That's why the plants are green. I don't touch them during the day. I do a walkthrough and I go, oh, my poor plants, because they're hanging over and everything. The tomatoes are still going. You can see the tomatoes. The tomatoes are going good. Everything's going good. It just needed some extra water as far as every day. Because when it's not this hot, I only water every other day. And in the winter, I might only water once or twice a week because I know that little reservoir of water is underneath. See, these are in the front there. Now, there's nothing in this. I'm using this strictly to throw things in. I should grab some of that soil, and it's feeding this papaya. So it's draining out. So it's got all kinds of matter in there, and I'll get some more leaves in there. It goes on the ground, and that papaya has long left that pot. The roots are in the ground. And it feeds off of the breaking down compost in there. So I just wanted to come on and say that we're fine. We made it through good. I had confidence we would, but it was a little scary with the gazebo because I couldn't find Gary, and I thought it was gonna go flying through the canyon holding on to my little gazebo, but I didn't. All is good. Hope everybody made it through fine. And now, look at that. How beautiful the plant is across the hill. I don't even remember it that green yesterday. I mean, plants will do that overnight. When they get this wonderful rain and all that nitrogen in it, I mean, the plants are just gonna grab that water. It's like, oh, I want this now. It's gonna grab it before the big trees grab it. And things are just so beautiful. Anyways, we're going to get warm again. We're going to be probably about 80 today, but don't quote me on that. And then they said the rest of the week will be about 85, but we're out of the hundreds and 110, and it has been brutal. It took a toll on even the citrus tree. I was trying to water. See how the leaves are curled? As soon as I hit it with water, you can see underneath the leaves are beautiful, and the other trees, they start to uncurl, but some of them will just have to be trimmed off because they had too much heat damage. A lot of the fruit I can see here were sunburned. Even there were some vegetable plants that were sunburned. But you know, all in all, that's nothing. That just turns into compost and life goes on. So with that, have a wonderful, wonderful day. And don't forget to eat what you grow. And thanks everybody for the well wishes that we're everywhere else instead of Southern California. Bye-bye, and stay cool if you're in a hot area, and stay warm if you're in a cool area.